You had your chance and then you blew it.
That is the most absurd statement of the year.
Nice. Nice.
Oh, baby.
I'm in my zone, I'm feeling it.
Live from West St. Paul Studios, it's time for MinneZona Sports Live with DJ Mattie C and Paul the Shield Vold.
And this is MinneZona Sports Live. We are back, yes! Episode 159. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. We're hitting 160 next week. Let's go.
Wow.
Anywho, I'm your host, DJ Mattie C, a.k.a. Matt Callahan, a.k.a. Callie, a.k.a. Mattie C, etc., etc., etc. And all the way from Granite City Studios in St. Cloud, Minnesota, Paul Vold, the Shield. What is going on there, Shield?
I am more than happy to say that we have football back once again. Of course, last week was a Hall of Fame game. That doesn't really matter all that much. It's more of a train wreck, if anything. But preseason football is back here starting this week as well. Of course, the Vikings play tomorrow night, which I did have to remind myself like 5 minutes before the show as well, hence the choice in tonight's attire. But, hey, I'm happy that we got football back once again, and we will have football all the way through until I think February is the last games as well. So more than happy to have more than enough football in our lives again. So
I love that you mentioned football because we've got a football action-packed show tonight. You called for it. It took a little bit to edit this bad boy, but we're ready. We are ready to give you the vlog, the call to the hall. I'm telling you, Voldy, this was one of the most, I had so much fun making this thing. And just to kind of give a taste of what it's like in Canton, Ohio, at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And this is something to where if you guys are huge football fans, like myself, like Voldy, and pretty much all the zoners here, I highly, 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 and I'm quoting Kerf Doctor here, I highly recommend that you guys go visit there at some point. It is absolutely 100% worth it. And, you're going to see from this vlog that I did, and it's about 7 minutes long, so it's short but very, very good. And it highlights a lot of things that are there, and what we got to experience, not only at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but we also did go to the Browns Stadium, which had some cool stuff as well. So you'll see that in that vlog and whatnot. And we will have it on the socials medias, so do not fret. It will be on the socials medias, not only a YouTube version, but also a socials medias version for Facebook, Instagram, and the Twitter sphere, as we like to say here. So it will be out probably tomorrow, so make sure if you can't see it right now or you can't see it tonight, make sure to check it out in the coming days because it's absolutely awesome. It's worth seeing, and there's a lot of cool things there. So, Voldy, you know what? Before we got to preview at least what we're doing after the vlog. So,
Of course.
the Vikings have a game tomorrow, obviously, against the Seattle Seahawks. Oh, by the way, Voldy, it's at Seattle because we always go to Seattle. But, I know as of recently we have, but it always happens to be like that. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at some players to watch in that preseason game. And then after we're doing Callahan School of Logic, I was watching the ESPN First Take, and there's just some absolute hate for our Minnesota Vikings among the national media. We always talk about this on the show, but I'm just fed up at this point. You're gonna want to stay for this one after Tater Tot Hot Take as well. ARA Voldy's got some fiery ARAs this week, especially Teddy B getting a new home in Detroit. Highlighting that. The college football deal that's been going on. I want the zoners' thoughts on that as well. And then the Orioles broadcast thing has gotten a lot of heat as well. I have some thoughts on that. So does Voldy. So we got a lot coming, especially with Shield Shoutouts. So make sure you guys stick with us the whole ride here if you can. So it's time. I think it's time to do the call to the hall. It's about 7 minutes, then we'll be back hitting you with some Tater Tot Hot Take. So, zoners, enjoy it. Let us know what you think, and we'll go from there. Zoners Fantasy League. Be ready for Pick'em. That's all I got to say. There's a lot going on with that because it's not. At some point, I'd love to do it. The thing is we have to have a lot of zoners invested into it. That's the thing.
Yep.
So hopefully if we were able to get some people. So maybe next year, but do the Pick'em this year. Dude, Kirk is 42 out of 100 from the NFL players. How can you not be a believer then? They find a way. It's that simple. They just find a way. So it's just how it is. All right. With that being said, I'm glad I could answer that before that because there's a lot of cool stuff that is in this vlog with it. So without further ado, here is the call to the hall. Sup, zoners? DJ Mattie C here from MinneZona Sports Live to bring to you the vlog of the call to the hall. Let's bring you some of the cool things we got to experience in Canton, Ohio. We got up bright and early to catch our flight to Cleveland, Ohio, and headed to the Minneapolis airport. We arrived in Cleveland and hopped on the road to Canton to check into the hotel. As we entered the city, we were greeted by the birthplace of football, Canton, Ohio. After some exploring, we drove back to Cleveland to see the Browns Stadium and take a look at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There were banners of Browns players and a statue of Jim Brown, which listed all of his accomplishments on and off the field. Here we are at the Browns Stadium. Pretty sweet. Myles Garrett, Joe Bitonio, Jeremiah, I can't remember his last name, but I know he's pretty good, from Notre Dame. And then you have the massage guy. Deshaun Watson. We drove back to Canton and got prepped for the big day to go visit the main attraction. We drove over to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and wow, just look at it. Immaculate. All the 2023 inductees were featured here on a banner just to preview all the exciting attractions inside. We were greeted by the Pro Football Hall of Fame staff members, took a photo, and started our journey. The first thing we saw was a video of all the Pro Football Hall of Fame inductees finding out that they'll be inducted to the Hall of Fame. The inductees each had their own exhibit of memorabilia from their NFL careers. The next thing we saw was the history of the NFL, starting all the way back in 1892 and all the way up till now. All of the commissioners had their own biographies and plenty of cool memorabilia and artifacts. We made our way up to the second floor where there was all the NFL records, jerseys from key games, and accomplishments from the players and coaches, some of which were a little less than enjoyable. We then walked into the Hall of the Football Immortals. Each Hall of Fame bust had its own unique features and nearly took up the whole area. Here are some of the Vikings legends and my favorite players that I took photos of.
One clap. Pull your 84 jerseys out. I'm back home. Pull your 84 jerseys out. This is gonna be a fun ride.
After looking at all the busts, there were video touch screens where you can watch highlight videos of players and coaches. We then made our way to an area of records and awards that recently made their way to the hall. One of those records being from a certain QB.
Oh my God! Kirko Shields!
Yep, you guessed it. Kirko Chains! His jersey along with Greg Joseph's cleats are put on display after making the greatest comeback in NFL history. And of course, this Vikings moment.
Kirk Cousins back to throw on 4th and 18. He's given time. He wants Jefferson. Climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Justin Jefferson pulled it in! The catch of his life! But we gotta look back at this.
How does he make?
JJ's gloves and sleeve made its way to Canton. And who can forget this one?
Cannon steps into it. Pass is caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
Stefon Diggs' cleats from the Minneapolis Miracle are sitting comfortably in Canton. We went down a level and got to see the official Super Bowl 58 trophy. This exhibit is full of Super Bowl history and moments highlighted with football items from each Super Bowl. There was also a program where you could design your team's Super Bowl ring. Hey, it could happen. The next section had Xbox Series X consoles for anyone who wanted to play Madden 23. And trust me, none of those kids wanted this smoke. The NBC exhibit was full of cool moments and items from key Sunday night games. And yep, Mr. Now Here's a Guy is featured, especially Queen of Sunday Night Football intros. Carrie Underwood had a dress and jewelry from one of her concerts. Another awesome exhibit was the Black College Football Hall of Fame, which featured players like Shannon Sharpe, James Harris, Doug Williams, Hugh Douglas, and former Vikings punter Greg Coleman. We ended our Pro Football Hall of Fame journey at the enormous Hall of Fame shop, and we sure went on a spending spree. Papa Callahan and I spent 6 hours at the Hall of Fame, and it was absolutely amazing. If you love football, I highly recommend you visit Canton, Ohio someday. Thanks for watching, and remember, folks, keep in the zone. Ta-da! Boom!
Wow.
There's a lot to unpack there, man. I mean, it was... Zoners, let us know your thoughts and whatnot, and we'll answer them best we can. But I just wanted to add some flavor to some of these, especially with the Moss one, since I know a lot of guys back at St. Thomas, we kind of played this a lot, like a little bit too much.
Oh, yeah.
That whole Randy Moss thing, and our math teacher wasn't overly too fond. He thought that like I went at home at night and just played it every night and whatnot. So but I had to throw that in there because I know those guys would appreciate that and love it. So it was really fun to do. And obviously, Voldy, you did see some Brady stuff in there. There were a lot of the Super Bowls, his official jersey, things like that. And the busts were amazing. I mean, they looked exactly like the guys you. I mean, like Dion's was spot on. Moss's was almost near. I think it was perfect, and Dawkins and all those guys. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty sweet, and there's a lot there. We spent, like I said, we spent 6 hours there. This is
6 hours, bro.
It was so much fun, and Voldy, if you ever get a chance to, I mean, I highly recommend it. But I don't know, what were your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
I mean, 6 hours. I don't even know if you could fully digest everything in that time. The fact that you guys were out there for so long, but hats off to everything though with that vlog there too. Really captured a lot of the key moments there. Fantastic to see. I was just more excited about the pro shop as well that you guys checked out that as well. I think I probably would have spent 6 hours there in the pro shop itself before even getting a look at everything too. But hey, worked out for everybody there.
It did. And a little fun fact too, this involves Shield as well. We all know Voldy likes collecting patches and whatnot.
Yep.
And it took me almost the whole time there to find it. And eventually I said, I'm just going to ask somebody. So I asked one of them, and I said, do you have something like, and so Voldy also has a magnet that I gave to him as well of the Hall of Fame. And I said, do you have something like this, but it's actual, like a patch? It's like woven in, like, what? And I'm like, it's like a patch. And they're like, oh, yeah. It's just at the front here. And I'm like,
yep, of course.
I just felt so stupid.
So high maintenance.
Why didn't I check the front when they had all the stuff and whatnot? Like, what the hell am I doing? So, it was fun, guys. I honestly, zoners, anyone, I highly recommend, as the Curve Doctor likes to say, going to Canton, checking it out. So, I'm glad you guys liked it. Easy A says that was so dope, and I said I appreciate that. And Dylan Kilpatrick, I'd love to go there, especially after seeing what there is to do. Thanks for the peek into Canton. You're welcome, honestly. And we went the week before the Hall of Fame game, so just to clear things up, if you're wondering, we actually Yeah, we actually went the week before because I talked to one of the people that were working in the pro shop there, and they said, they're like, yeah, it's good that you came this week because next week it's a madhouse. There you go. So,
Can't imagine.
Yeah, it's unless the Vikings are playing, which they have before.
They have, yeah.
Maybe at some point I do that. Who knows? So
Who knows? Maybe when Jared Allen gets in next year.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. And this shirt right here, I got from the Hall of Fame. So Vikings legends, and it's on the back here of all the Vikings that are in the Hall of Fame. So there's going to be more, that's for sure. So including Jared Allen because he definitely deserves it.
Yes, sir.
So without further ado, that you guys can check that out on the socials medias here by tomorrow if you want to check that out. Share with your friends. Share with anyone who's a huge football fan and whatnot. You're just going to see a little peek into Canton, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. And if you missed it, you can also, rewind this back and go back and watch it from this live feed as well. So you guys have that option as well. So appreciate that. And Voldy, let's move to the present here. Let's talk about these Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks. So I think it's time for some Tater Tot Hot Take. Oof.
Fresh out of the oven, it's Tater Tot Hot Take.
All right, we are back for some Tater Tot Hot Take. We talked about our vlog and whatnot, and if you ever want to rewind and see it again, please feel free to do so. Guys, the Vikings play football tomorrow. How about that? We get football. It's a lot of a football-filled show, I feel like, too, but very well worth it. The Vikings go to Seattle. They're at Seattle again, Voldy. I mean, it's just it never stops. But the game is at 9 o'clock. I really wish it was, for us at least. Them, it's like 7. But this preseason game is kind of like, the first might go one series and then go from there. Or, or we'll see, what happens and see what guys are making progress, what guys aren't, and whatnot. So, it's just, we'll see what we got. And there's been a lot of talk in camp. There's been some guys that have kind of stood out to Vikings fans and whatnot. And we're wondering from our zoners, and, I'm going to get Voldy's here too, what guys are you looking at in this game here coming up tomorrow? Are there anyone that you're just like, we got to see this from this guy? Are they going to, what's going to come from Addison? This Ivan Pace has just burst onto the scene as this really good linebacker in Flores' scheme. Voldy, give me at least one or two things, we'll go two, of what you're looking for in this game tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really looking at how is the running back situation going to be, because of the fact we know that Alexander Madison's going to be running back number 1. So who's going to slide into that number 2 spot? That was the number 3 guy last year that didn't get as many reps out of the backfield. Of course, we're looking at guys like Kene Nwangwu and, of course, Ty Chandler as well. But there are some other guys that are looking to maybe make that jump up this year with Dwayne McBride, who is a rookie, and, of course, Abram Smith as well. We're going to be looking for at least a reason to be kept on the roster going into, of course, the regular season. I'd really like to see Kene get more touches is the thing, because, obviously he has turned himself into a special teams guy just because of the fact he can return the ball. No, well, unfortunately, they're not kicking him the ball very much. So seeing him getting more action out of the backfield, Ty Chandler as well. We've seen spurts of it, of course, last couple of preseasons, and then maybe the occasional blowout game or whatever that he's been able to get more sustained reps out of the backfield. That's one thing I'm kind of looking at too. And of course, another thing is how's that defense with going to rebound, especially after last year. Of course, it is the first preseason game, so you're going to be working with a lot of guys. Maybe not a lot of guys that are going to be starting week 1, but at least see how the depth is going to be played out as well. lost a lot of guys out of the linebacking core this past year. The front seven is definitely going to be something to watch out for as well, especially with defensive coordinator that being Brian Flores as well in the mix with this first year with him in on the defense for the Vikings too. Really see how that really gets off to hopefully a good start here with a defense that really has struggled the last couple of years too, especially with of course how things shaped up last year, and of course had the Vikings offense had to make up for a lot of those games too.
Right. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought up Ty Chandler, because I did go to the Vikings night practice last night, and that dude is fast, and he's quite effective. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think he's going to get a lot of carries tomorrow, as well as McBride, and we'll kind of see where things are at with him. But like you said, everyone's kind of got their eye on the defense, and I understand that, and I feel like these guys are going to, I think somebody said, I can't remember which Vikings player said this, but they said that they were trying to, it was Jordan Hicks. He said that they were trying to make the big play and whatnot, instead of actually playing what they needed to play on defense. Brian Flores isn't the type of guy that's going to let guys just sit back in coverage all the time. He's going to come in with blitzes, and Flores is a defensive-minded coach, and he knows how to run a defense, especially when he coached under the great Bill Belichick, and Belichick obviously being a defensive guru as well. So I'm looking at that as well as everyone else, but I think I see a lot of people kind of being thrown off with the unofficial depth chart, and they're worried about Addison because he's slotted behind, some guys, and it's like KOC said specifically, this doesn't mean anything. It's just, it does, but it doesn't, because this isn't the final roster, right? So they're going to be fine in that category, because, have you seen the highlights with Addison? The guy's doing exactly what we want to see, right? And it's not just Addison, Voldy, and zoners. It's also KJ Osborne. He's been making plays. Oh, by the way, N'Keal Harry, who the Vikings just signed, he's making plays. So it's like, we got those guys making plays. Jalen Naylor, of course, has been fantastic. Like, there's so many wide receivers that are playing well, and it's, there'll be some drop off here and there, but I'm kind of looking at the wide receivers. I want to see who's going to ball out and make this team too. Obviously JJ is going to be JJ, and KJ and JA, Jordan Addison. So I'm kind of looking more with wide receivers. This game, the defense is definitely the A topic. We got to see some improvement there. We have to see some, exotic blitzes, not like Zim-esque, but this is Flores' defense. Show us what you got. So that's what we're looking for. Zoners, let us know what you guys are looking for too. One other thing I'm going to add here too. Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall. You have backup with Mullins, and obviously Hall's going to be a project, right?
Right.
I was watching, them throw and whatnot, and it's no disrespect to these guys at all, but Kirk is head and shoulders just much more efficient and whatnot. Not saying Mullins is bad or Hall's bad, because he's just a rookie, right? But Kirk just is, spirals on spirals, accuracy and whatnot. So there's a lot of good things, and keeping Kirk healthy is key here too as well, because obviously offensive line, you also, are they going to go after Risner? Are they not? What are we doing here? Are they stick with Ingram? They're going to stick with Cleveland? So that's another thing to factor in with this team. So I'm going to say, we'll go wide receivers, and obviously, Voldy, you bring up the running back too situation. I believe Kenne is back up to Madison at this point. But I could see Chandler being back up to Madison.
Very well could be.
Also get a lot of playing time here, I feel, this season. So, and McBride, I mean, there's a lot of good things, I feel like, offensively. Defensively is going to be an interesting thing. Asamoah, you throw in there. Davenport, who had a really poor season last season, but the Vikings bring him in on a one-year deal, and obviously you have Daniil. So, should be a good matchup nonetheless, because they got some, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is going to be pretty good for Seattle as well. So we will see what we get on Thursday, tomorrow. So, all right, that's going to do it for Tater Tot Hot Take this week. And like I said, if you guys want to check out the vlog, you can also rewind this back and then get caught up with us later on. But we're doing Callahan School of Logic
yes, sir.
This week. Voldy, we talked before the show. We actually, you know what? We talk about this all the time on the show. We talk about how the national media is just, they don't give a shiitake about the Vikings whatsoever. And it's gotten to the point where it's like, you just kind of like, they don't care, like, and it's not a big deal, but like, when I was watching ESPN First Take the other day, I was getting my car serviced, getting an oil change, Q Blue Mountain State, da-doom. But I had to throw that in there. But I was watching ESPN First Take, and the amount of focus that they put on all the three of the other teams, especially the quarterbacks of the other teams, was absolutely maddening. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's go to Callahan School of Logic. This needs to be talked about.
Class is in session. You're enrolled in Callahan's School of Logic.
All right, zoners, Voldy, sit at your desk, get your paper, get your pencil, get your pen, whatever you need to write this down. There's not a lot of respect on the Vikings name. Among the ESPN crowd, I will say, and I'm pointing them out here too. Stephen A. Molly Cam were not in that day. Obviously, he has idea, or they. I wouldn't say he's a Kirk hater, but he just kind of is. I don't know. Maybe he is. I don't know. But at the same time, the amount of hype that the Lions have been getting, the Bears even, and with the Packers, of course. I was watching First Take, and they were debating on who by the end of the season would be the top QB in the NFC North. Now, you can make that, like, I understand, like, people are going to be different in some areas and whatnot. And first off, Mike Tannenbaum, who's, I think, been a Vikings hater his whole career at ESPN, has said that Jordan Love is going to have he's going to be the second coming of Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be that damn good. And not only that, he says they're going to win the division this year. I mean, are you serious? Like, we haven't seen Jordan Love play a down. And if you've been tuning into the social medias, there's been a lot of bad throws by him. And there was a throw that he's like, dude, he did a no look in their scrimmage when he was literally getting sacked. It was him throwing the ball away, and it was a lucky throw to Aaron Jones. This, that's not a scene of things to come. There's a lot that has to happen. There's a lot of unknowns here. So he's just talking up the Packers. He's like, I got 8 first rounders on defense. They're going to be amazing. And it's like, They were 9-8 last. No, 8-9, whatever. I don't care either way. But the fact that he said that Jordan Love is going to be the best QB in the division by the end of the season is absolutely asinine. Courtney Cronin, a former Vikings reporter, says Jared Goff. Jared Goff's going to be the best quarterback in the division by the end of the year. Now, I will say there is some merit to that because Jared Goff did play well this past season. 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He had like 15 touchdowns, no interceptions the last few games of the season. So very good. I give him credit for that. And then Louis Riddick agreed with that. I don't really necessarily have a problem with those two right there. But then this Shea Pepler said Justin Fields. It's like they think that a guy that can't throw, and no offense to Mitch, but he can't throw. We all know this. He can run, he can't throw. All right. They don't even mention, not even the Vikings, not even Kirk Cousins. They think that these guys are going to hop over Kirk Cousins and, be the NFC North. The Vikings are just going to be the last team in the division. I am so sick of the disrespect from these national media people. It's just like, well, it's just Kirk Cousins. It's just the Vikings. They have very little evidence to support their claims. Voldy, you told me that you gotten in somewhat of a little bit of an argument with your brother about Kirk Cousins being a top 10 QB. Yep. And as you look at the stats and you look at what he's done fairly well. And the thing is, it's like, well, it's just Kirk Cousins. It's just like when people look at Kirk Cousins, they think nerd, he can't get it done in big games and all that stuff. They look at the records and whatnot. Have you seen that defense that played last year? Have you seen exactly what is going on with this Minnesota Vikings team right now? I mean, the reason why they lost against the Giants is because Ed Donatell's defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. So we have that going for us. And the fact that there's not even a mention, and it's not like Kirk went, I don't know, he had 29 touchdowns, only 14 interceptions, and all of a sudden people think, oh, well, he still didn't do that much. Oh, please. That is so baloney, and especially when the Vikings went 13-4 with a terrible defense, an awful defense, and made the playoffs. Did any of those teams make the playoffs? No, they didn't. Detroit dug themselves into a hole early in the season. They were like 1-6. They weren't able to come back. They had a couple key losses during that stretch, too. Then you look at Green Bay. Rodgers is gone, and apparently Jordan Love's the second coming of Aaron Rodgers. That's ridiculous. The Bears were 3-14 last year. 3-14, all right? Bustin' Fields can't throw. And let me add to this as well. With Bustin' Fields, okay, he had 4 games where he only had single-digit completions. That is the worst in the division. Goff has better stats than that. Obviously, Rodgers did when he was here. And then also, Kirk Cousins. I mean, if you can't complete more than, if you're only completing single-digit passes, there's something wrong. And the fact that Fields figured it, like, oh, we'll give him the ball more, he'll run more. And yes, he was effective on the run. That's fine. You go right ahead. But there is no ifs, ands, or buts that if he does not throw the ball well this year, they're going to start questioning whether he's going to be the guy or not. Because it's a make-or-break year for him. Like I said, the Bears are not going to win the division. And we've talked about this. And the Packers, a lot of unknowns with the Packers. Their defense, yes, is good. Don't get me wrong. Their offense, they say that, Jordan Love's. Who's their tight end? Who's their wide receivers? Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. Oh, he had a great end of the season and whatnot. It's like, And then apparently some Packer fans thinks he's going to be the next Justin Jefferson. This is just, it's maddening. And they just kept talking about how they're going to win the division and everything, but there was no mention of us. No mention of the Minnesota Vikings, which is just ridiculous. And I was tempted to go up and turn that. I shook my head, and I'm just like, this is why, people don't like watching this, is because they're favoring the teams that that think are going to be that good. They're hyping up these teams. Then all of a sudden, you know what happens? Those teams underperform, and then they say, see, we knew that they would underperform, and the Vikings would be... They go back on their statements. And I'm telling you, Voldy, Zoners, I'm keeping receipts. And I said before, I mean, the Vikings went 13-4, and I see the defense can't get any worse. The offense got even better. You have Hawkinson. You have Addison. KJ Osborne's been tearing it up. Alexander Madison, he's finally getting his shot, right? Mm-hmm. They can't sit back and actually do the research, look at the Minnesota Vikings right now, and you will see that they definitely have the edge in winning the division this season again. The Lions are getting a lot of hype. We all know that. Voldy and I have talked about this before. Sure, they'll be good, but their defense was terrible last year. Did they add some guys? Sure, they did. And hopefully, for them, that they'll, play a little bit better defensively. Offensively, they're still missing Jameson Williams. Oh, they got rid of a guy who scored 14 touchdowns, Jamal Williams. Let him go. They bring in Gibbs. Questionable decision. Just all of a sudden you're bringing in him. Then David Montgomery. So there's a lot of question marks. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a stud. Really like the way he plays. Who's Detroit's tight end? Do they even have there's a rookie tight end now? Do we know?
They had one. They traded him to us.
Yeah, thank you very much, by the way. That deal's worked out pretty well for our Minnesota Vikings.
Fantastic.
Hawkinson. So you have to be the man, you got to beat the man. Ric Flair has said it many times. And the fact that the Vikings are going to be playing Detroit later in the season, I think is a benefit for us, because I believe that the Vikings will win the division. The Lions are going to be second, but I feel like they'll probably take a wild card spot. I'm not trying to diss on the Lions, but let's not forget, the Lions are the Lions. Okay? Let's not forget that. So keep that in our minds for a little bit. But this is what I'm going to end it with here. And the logic in all this is Minnesota will never get the respect until they win the big one. And even when they do, I feel like we're still not going to get respect. Oh, you won one, and you feel high and mighty, and it's like...
They're going to say the other team lost. Minnesota didn't win. The other team lost.
Right.
How did this team lose to Minnesota? They're going to make us look as bad as possible, no matter what.
So, to cap it all off, Zoners... When they are talking about the NFC North and they're hyping up all these teams, just remember that a lot of their opinions don't mean a lot. And especially if you're watching ESPN, there's a lot of BS that gets thrown around there, and hence why I don't watch a lot of it anymore, because it's just overtaken by terrible takes and just to get clicks. But hey, you know what? We're in the same business too, so. That's just kind of how it is. Before we get to you, Voldy, people hate Kirk because he is immobile, and like lots of others are, and they have done well. Tom Brady, he's not a running quarterback. He's the greatest, arguably the greatest of all time, or is the greatest of all time. And you look at quarterbacks like him, and Mahomes, but he's an exception because he's that good. But I don't know. I've kind of brushed it off and whatnot, but they don't follow it up. They just think, oh, I know Bears fans are, feeling good about this year, and their defense is going to be better, and offense is
stop. Are they feeling good?
Just stop.
I don't know.
So, Voldy, I know we've kind of talked about this, like I said before, a lot, but anything new to add with this? What do you got?
I mean, there really isn't much else that can be said about just the lack of respect that it comes to the Vikings as well. The fact that you went that entire time with, I'm talking about what was said on First Take too, is that the fact that it went on the whole time without even a mere mention of Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, or even the Vikings as well, who won the division last year, is just a complete slap in the face to anything that the Vikings have done or ever will do at this point, because of the fact that everybody else is so focused on what Justin Fields might do this season, what the Packers might look like with a new starting quarterback, the hype behind the Lions as well. Look, breaking it down here team by team, you don't know what you have with the Packers to start off, especially. Of course, their defense, Jair Alexander, highly regarded after last season, and he has certainly improved his game as well. Certainly something to make note of. You've got a starting quarterback that's going to be coming in this year with as green behind the ears as you can be, with only a couple of plays here and there in spot starts as well, with a lot of unfortunately no-name receivers for them, minus Christian Watson, who's poised for maybe a breakout season, hopefully not against the Vikings, but against everybody else that would be nice. And then you've got, of course, the Bears as well. I've yet to meet one Bears fan that's confident about anything going into this season as well, besides the fact that they know that Justin Fields is going to be starting quarterback. That's the only thing they're really confident about, especially with, of course, now going into a second year that will be with head coach and also with a front office staff as well to really get settled into things too. And you look at with Justin Fields, his game improvement from, of course, last year and the year before too. I mean, it's something to keep an eye on, because obviously if they build an offensive line around him, he will play better. He will be able to connect with those guys downfield for him again. And talking about the Lions too, so much hype going into the Lions, especially after being a Hard Knocks last season. Of course, now with a coaching staff and a front office that's been together for a few years, they're poised for a breakout season. But again, this is the Lions. They can fight their way out of a paper bag most years, let alone a fight for an NFC North crown and a playoff position. They could very well find themselves in a wild card spot, because they're throwing out wild card spots like they're going out of style here with the current playoff format. I wouldn't be surprised in 10 years if more than half the league makes the playoffs with wild cards, if not 3/4 of the league. And then you got to feel bad for those teams that didn't make the playoffs, because how bad are you? You couldn't take one of the 19 wild card spots in a 32-team conference, and that's impossible to even think about that going down the road. But with the Lions too, they continue to find ways to screw things up. Jameson Williams can't keep his money in his pocket as well. Jamal Williams is gone. You've got, even with Jared Goff, we'll talk about another quarterback battle potentially, or at least a backup position too with that. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is a very good wide receiver for them. Defensively, I don't know what you can say. They've got a couple of guys that have made some splashes last year, especially with their head coach, Dan Campbell, offensive-minded coach as well, former Lions great as well. It's going to be interesting to see how they play. But again, the Lions can find a way to stay the Lions by screwing things up in multiple ways. And now that we're circling back to the Vikings, we haven't even talked about that in great lengths as well. The numbers don't lie. Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback. I don't care who says that he isn't, because look at the numbers. We've seen it multiple times here throughout this offseason. His numbers stack up better than Joe Burrow. His numbers stack up better than Josh Allen. That's right. Yeah, I was getting on that track as well. And sooner or later, the way things are going to shape up, who knows? Maybe his numbers are going to be better than Patrick Mahomes. Maybe, but definitely better than Tua Tagovailoa. I'll tell you that much right now, too.
Yeah.
But looking at the way things have gone, there's never going to be any respect for Kirk Cousins, because he gets the job done, doesn't showboat about it, doesn't play in a market that's very respected by the national media. Until they change their attitude, it's going to stay that way. And again, like I had said before I even started too, Minnesota, if they even win the big one, they will never get the respect that they deserve, because the national media is going to talk about it. How did this team lose to Minnesota? Even though they lost 75-3, how did this team lose to this team that isn't any good to begin with as well. So it comes down to the Vikings just going out there and having to prove everybody wrong time and time again. And until the national media comes around and says, look, we're wrong, this team is good, we admit our fault, it's never going to happen, unfortunately.
Here's my suggestion to everyone. Watch NFL Network. Much more better, not biased or anything. Well, there's some that are. I should say. James Jones being one of them. But, again, it's just the Kirk hate and the ripping, the Kirk everything, the Vikings everything. It just got to a point where I'm just like, this is ridiculous. And this needs to be talked about because we're sick and tired of hearing about it. And the fact that, when Kirk had the chains on, they're like, oh, that's so stupid. Like, he's got chains on and everything like that. The guy just went and had a game-winning drive, and you're ripping him because he's having a little fun. Like, get the hell out of here, man. I mean, he was icy, as we like to say.
Oh, my God. Kirko, chill.
Kirko, chill, baby. Let's go. Christian Darrisaw. And as you saw on the vlog there, we had that as well, if you saw that. That's going to do it for Callahan School of Logic. We've said what we needed to say about this topic, and we are kind of closing the book on this. And, it'll probably be brought up again, but again, it's the same old BS. Everyone hates the Vikings except for our local stations and whatnot. So,
yep,
it is what it is. All right, without further ado, let's move on to ARA. Teddy B with the Lions. Congrats to Teddy. Oregon and Washington joined the Big Ten, apparently. So we got that going for us. College football in general shaken up. Alvinkamara suspended, and I thought that should have been happening earlier. And then we've got the Orioles removing a broadcaster for stating facts. So there's a lot to talk about tonight for ARA. So, Voldy, zoners, let's get right into it with some observe or approve.
It's time for everyone's favorite segment, Absurd or Approved.
All right, here comes some unbiased takes here. So, Voldy, why don't you rattle them off for us, please?
Well, sticking with the theme here of the NFC North, and especially after, of course, talking about the Detroit Lions and the hype going into this season, former Minnesota Vikings quarterback and has kind of journeyed around the league here the last handful of years, Teddy Bridgewater is signing a deal to be a quarterback on the roster for the Detroit Lions, reuniting with Dan Campbell, who was an assistant head coach and tight ends coach when both of them were in New Orleans a few years back as well. Of course, Teddy has bounced around the last couple of years. He was with Miami last season. Then he was with, of course, he went to New Orleans after getting traded off the bus from the Jets as well. Then he ended up in Carolina to be their starter. That didn't work out. So he's kind of bounced around ever since that horrific injury that took him out against, of course, with the Vikings as well at the end of his tenure. But looking at, of course, the situation now with Teddy Bridgewater back in the NFC North once again, is it absurd or approved? Teddy signing with Detroit will kind of sour any potential reunion with the Viking years ahead, maybe once his career is all wrapped up.
That's a good question. I don't think so because we've seen some guys go over to other teams like Jared Allen to the Bears. Adrian Peterson actually played for the Lions at one time for a little bit. So, yeah, I don't – do I think that a reunion could happen? I don't know. I mean, it's –
I hope so.
It'd be great. And, having him as a backup would be cool and, and whatnot. Like, I wouldn't say no to it because, honestly, I love Teddy. And I think he is the guy works hard and, he had an injury that was pretty much derailed a lot of what he could do. And he can still sling it a little bit. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I feel like that injury really changed him and whatnot. But, Him signing with Detroit, I think, is a good place for him, especially knowing Dan Campbell and whatnot. And I think that's good being behind Goff as well. And, if something were to happen to Jared Goff, then he'd be, Teddy'd be ready. And hopefully it's not against us because I don't like beating up on Teddy. But, but anyway, I have nothing but love and respect for Teddy, and I'm glad that he was able to sign somewhere. I just wish it was, somewhere like, the AFC instead, just so I could cheer him on. But of course, it's with the Lions. But it is what it is. So no, I think it's absurd. I don't think this will spur any reunion or anything like that. And if it is a reunion, great. I would absolutely welcome it with open arms. And I do still have the Teddy jersey that I have as well. And that's you never know. You just never know. So Voldy, what do you think?
I will die on the hill 9,000 times out of 10 that Teddy Bridgewater never got a fair shake after the injury as well. Sure, he made a couple of appearances with the Vikings, garbage time situations, but he never got a fair shake, especially coming off the injury, being cleared to play. And the Vikings just let him go. Never gave him a real chance or anything. Moving on from that, yes, he has bounced around a little bit. His numbers have kind of waned as well, but he's never been really able to get comfortable in a system or with a team as well. Hopefully returning to when he did have good success with New Orleans as well. I think at one point when he was filling in for an injured Drew Brees, I think it was 5-0 at one point, if not 6-0 during that stretch of when he was able to be a starter, comfortable in a system, comfortable in a scheme as well, that hopefully will translate to, of course, being at least comfortable in Detroit as well. Of course, we do know that Jared Goff's the number one guy there. Right. So having a good, sturdy backup like you have with Teddy Bridgewater will hopefully, obviously solidify things in Detroit. In the event that hopefully something doesn't happen to Jared Goff, Teddy can slide right in and make something happen as well. And, is it going to sour anything? I don't think so. I think, you would certainly hope that at least with the Vikings side of things that they would welcome the opportunity if and when Teddy decides to, hang up the cleats and maybe move on with his football career or a life after football. The Vikings would welcome him in. I would definitely like to see Teddy in purple once again, if not, of course, as a backup or, just given one more opportunity, at least retire as a Viking, because I think he's earned that. Yeah. Especially everything that happened, of course, at the start of his career too with the Vikings, and, he was just about to make that next step and push his team somewhere. Then he gets injured, comes back from that, ends up making some, at least making back to game action with the Vikings too at US Bank Stadium. And, after that, didn't get a real fair shake after that, ends up moving on elsewhere, and it's going to bounce around since then. I don't think it's going to sour any potential reunion. I just hope that it would happen sooner than later, at least while he's still viable as a backup option here in years to come. So I think it's absurd.
Yeah. And, like we said, I don't, if he ends up playing against us again, I don't want to play against him because, I don't want him to beat us, But at the same time, it is what it is. But good for Teddy. All right, next one, Voldy.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the vicious watering down of college football and conferences coming up here with our next story. Let's talk about one that's going to be right in our own backyard and some long road trips that are going to be coming here for years to come. It has been announced that Oregon and Washington have finalized a deal to join the Big Ten Conference beginning in 2024, 2025, and a move that will take, of course, the Pac-12 down to the very bitter end and now make the Big Ten the Big 20 conference as well, with, of course, USC, UCLA in the Big Ten conference coming up here this coming season. That really just makes it much more watered down, and the Big Ten conference now means absolutely nothing nowadays. But looking at it as well, is it absurd or approved? More West Coast teams joining the, quote, Big Ten. Is that good or bad for college football?
Well, I think it's absurd. I feel like we're going to get into this, even more coming up here, but we talked about this with these super conferences and whatnot. obviously we know what it is. It's a money grab, right? And there's a lot of these teams that are joining the first. It's USC and UCLA. Now it's Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten. It's just ruining the whole college football experience. You have those rivalries and you have those those conferences and whatnot. Like, what is the big issue with having those conferences? Is Pac-12's gone. I mean, that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good conference. They've got Oregon. They used to be, right, and they had Stanford, USC, UCLA. I mean, what the hell? That's all I really have to say. I mean, it's absurd in the fact that it's just this big super conference thing. It's not exciting. College football, the rivalries, everything. It's like, well, we're not getting rid of rivalries, but it's like, but you're like adding these teams into these conferences and just completely, screwing everything up. So it's less of a chance that the Gophers will have against some of these teams and whatnot, with, Oregon being, Oregon, very good, and Washington, they're okay. They've had some good seasons. They've had some bad seasons and whatnot. But I just think this whole West Coast thing with the Big Ten just doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion, and especially, traveling all those miles. But I don't know. I feel like when they have to come to Minnesota, and if it's in November and or December, they're going to be in trouble because we're going to have a little bit of home field advantage, I think, with that. So maybe we don't. I don't know. It depends on if they can travel. But it's absurd. This whole thing with college football right now is just absurd in itself, and really nothing else we can do about it. So, absurd. Voldy, what do you got?
I just don't. I know what exactly this is about. This is about money. It's about TV. It's about recruiting. That's what it's always been about. It's not about college football itself. It's about everything behind the scenes, because nothing makes me more excited about college football. Sit down, watch the CBS game of the week, because now the Big Ten is going to be on CBS. Indiana versus UCLA, Week 7 of the college football season is the Big Ten game of the week. No, I don't want that. I want Minnesota versus Wisconsin. I want my Michigan against Ohio State. I want Minnesota against Michigan as well for the little brown jug. That's what I want. I don't want to watch UCLA take on Purdue for a spot in the Big Ten championship. I don't want that. I want USC versus UCLA for the Big 12 championship as well. But apparently that's not my call anymore. It's watering it down much, much more, which we'll talk even more in depth about with all these shakeups are going on here with college football and their conferences as well. The Big Ten Conference is adding this West Coast wing as well. Of course, USC, UCLA, and Oregon and Washington as well. Did they really want to spend half their season traveling to the Midwest and even the East Coast? Let's not even forget about Penn State and Rutgers that are in there. Then you've got Nebraska in the mix as well that has joined in recent years too. You're telling me UCLA versus Rutgers is going to be must-see football coming up here in New Jersey when they got to travel 4 time zones and play a college football game and then get back in time for their classes the following week? I do not want this at all. It's completely absurd. It's just ruining the integrity, whatever integrity was left to begin with. And that's why the Big Ten Conference is going to stay on my top 10 and famous list for a very long time now at this rate. It's completely absurd.
Money, money, money. And as our friend Randy Moss would say,
Straight cash, homie.
Straight cash, homie, for the Big Ten, but not to the benefit of college football fans and football fans in general. So, all right, well, let's stick with the trend of college football, Voldy.
Well, looking at, of course, we did talk about with Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten Conference. They're not the only ones that are going to be shaking things up. The Big 12, of course, the Pac-12, I should say, is dwindling further and further more as well. Of course, really the whole thing that kind of kickstarted everything was Colorado announcing that they're going to be leaving the Big 12, the Pac-12, to go back to the Big 12 conference as they are going to be going back there as well. the ACC conference could very well have Stanford in their conference coming up here in upcoming seasons.
Yeah.
We already know that 4 more teams are going to be joining the Big Ten Conference. The Big 12 is getting watered down as well. You've got Oklahoma and Texas are going to be joining the SEC coming up. Then you got BYU, Cincinnati, Houston that are in the Big 12, but soon to be coming up next year as well. You're going to be looking at here with the Big 12 Conference, Arizona State, Utah, they're going to be bringing the league up as well with the Big 12. And the Pac-12 is probably not even going to exist in a couple of years, too, with teams that are going to be leaving. The only ones that are going to be left coming here in the next season are going to be Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, and Washington State. And that is just getting lessened and lessened because we're seeing that potentially Washington State and Oregon State are looking at staying in the Pac-12, while Stanford's looking at the ACC conference, and Cal doesn't even know what to think of anything right now. So with everything that just continues to be watered down further and further, with, of course, teams switching and jumping conferences as well. We didn't even touch on the former Big East with the AAC, Conference USA, the MAC, Mountain West, even the Sun Belt conferences won't even exist in 2-3 years down the road with everything going on. College football conferences are becoming less and less because these Power 5 conferences, everybody wants to be in a Power 5 conference, are now just going to be a thing of the past here pretty soon. But looking at all the shakeups with these conferences that are going to be coming up, what do you see as the most potential, most shocking conference switch of teams coming up here, if not this season, coming up here next season as well?
Man. Well, you mentioned the Stanford ACC one, and they were talking about that the other day, too. And apparently there is some speculation that they're going to go the Notre Dame route and do the independent scene, too.
Gross.
So I don't necessarily like that either, but it just doesn't work for that specific thing. And saying to stay in the Pac-12, if you're Oregon State, and it was a Washington State, right? You're not going to have any teams. So, I mean, at this point, I know
it's the Mountain West at this point.
Yeah. And, I mean, you might as well just start joining with more teams. I mean, you can't play each other all weeks. Obviously you get your, non-conference. Then you get your cupcake teams and all that stuff. But it's absolutely absurd, and I would say the Stanford, because ACC is like Florida State, right? No, they're SEC, right?
No, Florida State's ACC, yeah.
ACC, I'm sorry, yeah. And then Boston College, they're mostly East Coast teams. Clemson. I mean, why would you travel all the way from California all the way to South Carolina? Like, it's just mind-boggling to me. Yep. But again, NCAA, that's just how they work. It's all about the money and whatnot, and they don't give a crap about the rivalries per se either. Yep. So it's absurd, and I don't like that they're going to go into the ACC, and then you're going to have all those travel miles and everything. It's like, well, it shouldn't affect anything. Granted, yes, I understand that, but I mean, wouldn't you want to play teams that are within the area and everything like that? Like, that's just my thoughts on it. Your conference opponents, at least. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with traveling. I'm just saying, like, oh, let's take on Clemson all the way over here. Oh, they have to come all the way over here. So it's a two-way street here. So, I'd probably say if Stanford goes to the ACC, that's just ridiculous in itself. And Cal doesn't know what they're doing, apparently. So
they really don't know.
Voldy, what do you got?
No idea. I mentioned that, of course, with Colorado joining the Big 12, that kind of jumpstarted everything.
Sure.
It was really Texas and Oklahoma jumping the Big 12 and going the SEC. And I will say this, in 3 years' time, with the college football playoff format, we will have an all SEC final at some point in the next 3 years with the current layout of the, course, the college football playoff, because you're going to tell me that with all these big teams in the SEC that just continue to pile on, now the addition of Oklahoma and Texas in 2024, that voters aren't going to be swayed. It's like, hey, this is where the money's going to be at with all these SEC teams, especially Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt, all in the SEC. You're telling me the 4 teams from that conference are not going to be playing for a national championship? I highly doubt that, especially with money talking in college football as well. So Oklahoma and Texas are really the biggest surprise as well, because of the fact that they're going to be joining the SEC coming up here in, of course, that's going to be next year as well in 2024. That's really the big jumping point there. And seeing what is going to be left of the Big 12 coming up here next season, because of the fact, of course, Colorado is going to be joining them in the Big 12 conference. But, looking at what lies ahead, you got BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, that are Big 12 teams this season. Then you're going to be adding Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah to the Big 12 conference. That is going to at least, open a few eyes there. But I really see with the SEC conference, because, of course, they are the power conference, national championships come out of them in the last decade at least, out of the SEC conference. And that's just going to really be the one that stirs the whole ship of college football to begin with. And I could very well see any other conference that just not holding any water when it comes to, trying to compete with the SEC, because they are the power conference and they're going to be the ones that are going to decide whether or not anything goes with them. So I really see the SEC conference, especially the additions of Oklahoma and Texas, being the biggest shakeup here, especially with college football here in these next couple seasons.
I just, I don't know what else to say. That's just the main thing. So we'll just see how it all pans out, I guess, in the next few years. All right, next one, Voldy.
So news out of training camp as well, that New Orleans Saints running back alvinkamara and Indianapolis Colts cornerback Chris Lamons have both been suspended for the first 3 games of the regular season for their role in a fight that took place in Las Vegas back in 2022. But they have been able to participate, will be able to participate in the preseason, but will be able to be on the active roster after, of course, week 3. Of course, they'll be going into week 4 of the season as well. It'll be Monday, September 25th. Of course, the Saints just really can't get anything positive moving in their direction when it comes to some of their offensive weapons. We know Michael Thomas has been out since basically the creation of time as well with any sort of injury, besides the fact that everybody thinks that he walks on water, but can't stay healthy enough to actually play any games as well. New quarterback this year. Now you're going to be losing your main threat out of the backfield and in the backfield to begin with alvinkamara for the first 3 weeks of the season. But they did get Jamal Williams as well, which is going to be a nice 1-2 punch there for the Saints coming up here this season. But is it absurd or approved? Will Kamara's absence for the first 3 weeks of the season be detrimental to the Saints' success to start off 2023?
Well, apparently they're in the running for Kareem Hunt now, so there's been a lot of talk with that, and they're adding these running backs like hotcakes. They acquired Jamal Williams in in free agents in the offseason. So I almost feel like this is a slap on the wrist, and getting in these fights and whatnot. I mean, what are you trying to preach here? I mean, the guy, alvinkamara, he's very good, and obviously, since he's come into the league, he's shown that he can be a top back. And the situation that happened, I mean, he almost killed somebody, and I think that has to be put into consideration here. And it's one of those things where you look at what they have, and they got Derek Carr, and I mean he's good, but he's not great. I'll put it like that. And they do have a pretty good defense, I will say. I know, I'm trying to be unbiased here and trying to, but no, I don't think it's going to hamper them with him being gone. I think they have guys behind him. And also, I just want to say, too, Jamal Williams, I feel, is so underrated, man. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
he's a hard runner. He gets those extra yards and everything like that. I just don't understand why.
Touchdown machine.
Yeah, that the Lions didn't hold on to him. The guy is good. I mean, I'm not saying that for fantasy wise because he was very good last year and I did have him on one of my teams. But with that being said, I don't know. I don't get that. So no, I think it's absurd. I think they'll be fine without Kamara. And he was gone last year a lot, wasn't he? Or was that?
He was,
2
yeah.
years ago. Yeah. So yeah, they'll be fine. Unfortunately, but Voldy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, it won't really affect him all that much. Like we said with Jamal Williams, of course, he is a scoring threat as well. And, of course, him getting comfortable with him being the lead guy, of course, that's going to be a huge benefit for him. And, of course, new starting quarterback Derek Carr to open up the season. That is going to be very exciting to see for at least the two of them to get kind of a fresh start in a new place as well, especially for Derek Carr. Played all those bad years out in with the Raiders and everything. But it's not like Jamal Williams has had bad years. And very productive with the Lions last year, and of course productive coming out of with the Green Bay Packers as well. Certainly going to be very optimistic for him, and especially getting the jump start that he will need going into week 1 of the season. Now it's just going to be a balancing act when you get Alvin Kamara back as well. Hopefully not to much success for his sake as well, personally, and biased opinion for that as well. But, just like to see, of course, unfortunately, the Saints aren't going to be hurt too much there, especially when they've got a nice number one, where they got 2 number 1 running backs, one of which is going to have to sit out the first 3 weeks, but definitely in good hands to start off the year for them too.
Yeah. And I just want to say, too, before we move on to our next one, the Twins are losing 7-4.
Wonderful.
We're probably going to get a press conference from Rocco Baldelli. You just got to play better. Stop it! Just stop it! Shut up! Just don't say that. Anything. Just don't even have the press conference. That's all I got to say. Anyway, we're going to go right to baseball here, and this one I'm going to enjoy talking about. So, Voldy, last one, please.
So there was with Major League Baseball, of course, you see some players that are getting, held out of the lineup and suspended for multiple reasons as well. This one, unfortunately, comes up in the press box with Orioles play-by-play broadcaster Kevin Brown has been suspended suspended indefinitely and taken off Masson broadcast for the upcoming season for some indefinite time after he made reference to Baltimore's recent lack of success at Tropicana Field, the home of the Tampa Bay Rays, in recent years as well. Of course, this spurred backlash from, of course, colleagues of Kevin Brown in the broadcasting world as well, even though that what he said wasn't entirely negative. It was just stating simple facts as well.
Right.
And people have come to his defense as well. Facts are facts, and the fact that we're punishing him for said facts as well that were reported and were set out by multiple people before it even got to Kevin Brown as well certainly has a few people questioning what really transpired with that in that regard as well. But is it absurd or approved that the Orioles made and removed Kevin Brown for stating those simple facts and have suspended him indefinitely for said games?
Well, I'm going to start off with it's absurd that they suspended him, speaking the facts. And I'm gonna go back in time here when, Voldy and I were in college. And it was one of my first I was color commentator with good old Michael Sterling. And there was a football game where there were some negative comments said by myself and, Michael for some, it is what it is. And apparently some people had some issues with that.
Whatever.
And the thing is what was said wasn't as bad as what people might make it out to be. Like there were some things said, but the sports director at the time, shout out to Dan Debates, just kind of, wanted to quick talk to me about it. Say, hey, there's a couple of things that people heard that they didn't necessarily like. And I said, well, what was the one that I said that was bad? And he said, well, separating the men from the boys. And it's like, well, there's I mean, yeah, I understand why people would get upset about that and whatnot, but I also know, too, that I'm trying to stay facts here because, I mean, you know, this is a big play. This is a big third down. This is a big play for a touch. I mean, I'm just calling it like it is, right? And granted, they didn't throw me off the air. They didn't. I mean, KSSU could have been like, "Well, you're done because you said that. Get out of here." You know, like if Voldy said it, like, you know, it's not like I'm dropping F-bombs left and right, you know. And in this instance, and I'm sure, you know, Voldy, when you've been doing games as well, there's going to be some things that you're going to see that's, you know, like, hey, they got to do better in this area. Here's what they can do. And you add it with a positive, right? So there's a way you can do that. And there was one person, though, and you know this well, this guy very well, too. Brad Bigler. Shout out to Brad Bigler, by the way. He actually was like, hey, you know what? Why don't you guys come down and watch some film? And that's what we did. We sat down with Coach Brad Bigler, and we watched film, and we had a great time getting insight and everything like that. So he is an absolute gem of a person for doing that with us. So, and taking time out of his very, very busy schedule, too. So, in this instance, let's go to this instance real quick here, and then I'll send it over to you. The thing that was said wasn't even bad. And the fact that they're like, oh, what you said is bad. You're suspended indefinitely for saying. He just said they don't play well at Tropicana Field, if I'm not mistaken, against the Rays. Like, what's the big deal? You know, they got to have some success. It's not saying like, oh, they're just terrible. I mean, there was a graphic, you know, I know it's comparing football, but like there was a graphic of Russell Wilson being able to beat us every single time with the Minnesota Vikings, right?
Yep.
Do people get pissed about that? I get pissed because we haven't been able to beat them, but is it true? Yes. You know, and they can, and I think he got it with a positive too. So I don't know what they're dealing with. The Orioles ownership is just absurd beyond belief. If there's an issue and, you know, you just, you know, talk about it, just say, hey, just watch what you say, not a big deal. But suspending him indefinitely for stating facts is absurd in itself. So it's absurd for the suspension. And, you know, like we said, you know, there's people that are going to be like, hey, just kind of watch it a little bit. Okay, no problem. So whatever. Voldy, what do you got?
You know, you can look at it a couple of different ways. First off, it's completely absurd that you take him off the broadcast for stating simple facts. And you look at it, that's just because the Rays have been good, as much as it pains me to say, because I hate Tampa Bay. I hate the Rays for every reason whatsoever. The Rays have been good. Somehow, some way, they find a way to beat the Orioles. The Orioles have been bad. They've been among the worst the last handful of seasons, and that's even putting it lightly.
Sure.
This is a team that doesn't know how to handle success, and this is where we are now because they've got a really good young core of talent that's now finally getting its chance to play in the big leagues, and the Orioles are struggling to find a way to deal with that success. So if you mask all the negative with all the positive that's going on, at some point things are going to boil over. And this is unfortunately a case where someone's livelihood is being affected by this as well, especially with Kevin Brown, who has been doing games for the Orioles this season, has also done some, you know, commentating for college sports and including cross with ESPN platforms as well. Look, this is not his fault to begin with. There are numbers that simply state that the Orioles have not played well at Tropicana Field. That you cannot deny. Somebody had to create that graphic. Somebody had to find those numbers. Yep. And I would imagine that all those people haven't been suspended. The fact that the Orioles are taking it out on this guy is completely absurd as well. So hopefully now with all the backlash that has taken place, things will be rescinded and Kevin Brown will be back on sooner than later as well. And again, the Orioles have played very well here. And of course, they're in first place in the AL East right now. And that's even better to see. Apparently, that's good for baseball in that regard too. But, you know, this is a team that's struggling to deal with the success that they have right now. They're taking it out on the wrong people. So it's completely absurd in my mind.
I mean, to go to that extreme, I mean, people have been taken off the air in the middle of broadcasts before, and people have, I mean, there's a number of things that have happened, but to take them off because of that, and it's like, well, he said that. It's like, well, someone made that graphic too, right? And I'm not saying that person should be disciplined, but it's true. You can't avoid facts, and that's why I feel like at Bally Sports North they do a good job of like, okay, there's a negative, but we can mask, put it in with a positive here. So I feel they do that a lot, but I believe they kind of I think he's going to be back or something like that.
Yeah.
If I were him, I'd be like, screw you guys, I'm going to go somewhere else. I would have done that. So whatever. So it's absurd. Zoners, let us know what you guys think, and we will make sure we get it to you. So great job with ARA this week, Voldy. A lot of good chat.
Thank you, sir.
With that and whatnot, and got some Shield shoutouts. And also, before we move on to that, if you guys want to check out the vlog, you can also rewind back and check that out as well. It'll be on the socials medias tomorrow officially, but you can also check it out just from this episode too. So feel free. All right, let's get it going. What's some Shield shoutouts?
Shield shoutouts.
All right, Shield, who ya shouting out tonight?
Well, do have to give a big Shield shout, of course, DJ Mattie C for a fantastic job on the vlog, as well as, of course, taking the time, effort, and me being as high maintenance as possible to find the patch for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and also the magnet as well, which I did give to my dad as to put on the fridge at the lake. So he is very appreciative of that. So big thank you, DJ Mattie C, Papa Callahan, and the squad there for that trip out to Canton. We do have to say, of course, best of luck. Former Minnesota Wild defenseman Matt Dumba, as he signed a one-year deal with the Arizona Coyotes. Of course, his work on the ice is well noted, stepping up and being a leader here for the team most in recent seasons. But, of course, his action off the ice as well, of course, being a leading voice for equality and also inclusion for the game of hockey for, of course, those minorities in the world of hockey as well that don't get the same opportunities as many others that do play the sport of hockey. So best of luck to Matt Dumba. My lasting impression of Matt Dumba when he was a rookie and came up with the Wild as well. He wore the number 55 in the early ages, of course, when everybody had to have the cool Twitter handle. His Twitter handle, if you want to write this out, stick with me here, was @Dumba55. Now, if you write that down, put a space between the B and the A in Dumba with 55 on the end, I'll let you read out the rest from that point as well. Zenon Konopka told him to change the Twitter handle of that. So that is my lasting impact of Matt Dumba many years ago when he was Dumba wearing number 55 and @Dumba55 on Twitter. So, and that's going to do it for Shield shoutouts here this week.
That's a great one. I did not notice that and whatnot. And
I remember that vividly. It was @Dumba55, and Zenon Konopka is in the locker room telling him, it's like, kid, you got to change that. You need to learn how to read Facebook.
Well, I'm glad he did at some point there. So, gosh, that's good. All right, well, great job with Shield shoutouts as always, Voldy.
Thanks, sir.
And, just like I said, I've been saying it the whole show. I mean, honestly, doing that vlog was one of the most fun things I've done in a long time. And it was so much fun, and I hope you guys do check it out here if you rewind back, and we'll have it on the socials medias. If you want to share it with whoever, please do, because, I mean, honestly, it's a great experience. You can look at the website, but honestly, I'm giving you the God's honest what's inside type of thing. So please feel free to check it out. There's a lot of fun things, especially, I want to keep it with Minnesota because this is a Minnesota sports show. So we want to, obviously with the JJ stuff and then the Randy Moss thing, and that's a shout out to my my STA guys and whatnot, and hopefully they check that out and they'll get a good kick out of it too. So make sure you like it, share it when it's posted and whatnot, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. It'll be on YouTube, and then it's going to be everywhere tomorrow. So please check it out.
Make the rounds.
Make the rounds. And also, there's something coming up. And I just got a notification today, actually, Voldy. Our pick'em will be back. So, again, we have the pick'em. You guys are more than welcome to join. And if you already have it, perfect. I will get the league ready to go soon here, so you guys can be prepared for the pick'em, because we have a lot of fun with it. We have the stickers that you guys would want. We could also throw in the shirts at some point as well, or some other stuff that are in the works. So just be on the lookout. That's all I really have to say with that. So, and then if you're like, you know what, I'm just going to buy it because it's a great deal. We've got stickers that are only $2. We've got small stickers for only $2. The big ones are the big $3 ones, which we have a lot of. So please let us know if you'd like one. We'll get it to you. And then the shirts as well. $20, $5 shipping for the shirts. The regular shirts, we still got some left. And then we have our limited edition extra large gray shirt as well. If you know someone that is around that would want it. Make sure you check out W2 Performance, Will Rattel, at www.w2performance.com. We are in talks to get him back on, so be on the lookout. I'm looking forward to having Will back on here. Shout out to National Fleet Graphic, Crown Rental, Tyler Knutson for the stickers. They're fantastic. Make sure you check out the Victorious P.O.D. There's something in the works as well with them, with Tyler Hermann, Jack Vickers. Fantasy football is ramping up, so get ready with all that. Make sure you check out TLS Performance with Troy Stoudemire Jr. Get caught up with all your performance needs and whatnot with that. And then make sure you check out the Popcorn Bucket List. Our guys, Nick Dahlhoff and Ryne Myhrberg as swell. So Omni Entertainment. Make sure you check those guys out. So
yes, sir.
That's going to do it for the show. A lot of action-packed show here tonight. Make sure, again, check out the vlog. Check out the segments that we have here. There's a lot of good content. And skol Vikings. And I'd be fine if we win. I don't really care if we lose.
Totally. Me too.
I just want to see some progression from certain areas, things like that. So, make sure you have some caffeine before you watch the game, unless you fall asleep, which I wouldn't blame you if you fell asleep. So, all right. Anyways, remember, as always, folks, keep in the zone.
Holla.
Thank you for watching MinneZona Sports Live. Join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. for live show broadcast. And as Voldy likes to say, follow us on all the socials medias.